this fractional reserve scheme, we inevitably become debt slaves to a ruling class of financial elite. Not because they are better or smarter than anyone else, but because they have rigged the system to benefit themselves at the expense of most people on the planet. Catherine Austin Fitts is an expert on this issue. She was an Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President George Bush Sr., and then an advisor to the Clinton administration.
Let's set up a game of Monopoly and you want to buy Park Place. What I can continually do is just print money, give myself more money, lower the value of your money by printing more. No matter how hardworking you are or how successful you are, I can always end up buying you for free.
So how come if you or I make up money it's called counterfeiting, but if the banks do it, it's increasing the money supply? How did the banks get this power? This is Jekyll Island, where in 1910, representatives from the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Morgans, and other private bankers gathered, secretly, to draft the legislation that would create the Federal Reserve. Ed Griffin literally wrote the book on what happened at Jekyll Island.
Central banks are banking cartels which have gone into partnership with the respective governments in the countries where they operate. And they've been given monopolistic power over the creation of the nation's money supply. That's what the politicians handed to them as a gift, you might say, for the partnership. Now, in return, what do the bankers do for the politicians? They promise to create money out of nothing now that they've got this legal power to do it anytime the government needs it.
And since 2008, we've witnessed the greatest fake money printing run in recorded history. This financial sleight of hand disguises the costs, hides who's to blame, and leaves us as debt slaves working to pay off the bill. I found it revealing that in the same year the Federal Reserve was founded, 1913, the Internal Revenue Service was also established. An income tax was then instigated so you and I would have to pay the politicians' debt, plus interest, to the bankers.
The problem is we have...
So, thank you for joining me for another episode of Road to Disclosure. I'm your host, David Sloan. So you can see in that video, continuation of the Thrive documentary, Foster Gamble explains how the banks just print money to pretty much pay off the politicians that they own. Politicians then determine what kind of policies the nation they control will abide by. This isn't anything new. This has been going on for a while, at least the last 100 years, as explained by some of the politicians in the last episode that I had quoted from. So this not being new, it's still going on. It hasn't weakened. It's gotten worse, in my opinion. And banks nowadays, because we work off of the fiat currency method of banking, they can print their money way out of pretty much anything. Printing. You look at the QE initiatives that were going on after the 2008 recession. Banks were just printing money. I think at one point it was up to like $85 billion a month that they were printing, and all that did was just kind of buy them time to fix the situation. They can consolidate businesses and corporations, fix their situation, which they caused to begin with, and foot the bill on the taxpayer, whether it was out of the United States or otherwise. So it's important to recognize then who these global elites are. In this case, utilizing the idea that the central banks of a nation pretty much control the money supply. In the United States, that would be the Federal Reserve. And in one of the articles that we looked at last episode was the one via David Wilcock, his website, divinecosmos.com. One of the articles out of globalresearch.ca out of Canada recognizes via information acquired from Saudi banks cited 80% ownership of the New York Federal Reserve Bank, which is the strongest Federal Reserve branch, by just 8 families, 4 of which reside in the United States. The 4 being Goldman Sachs, Rockefellers, Lehmans, Kuhn Loebs, and then outside the United States you have the Rothschilds, Warburgs, Lazards, and Israel Moses Sefs. This is also corroborated information by CPA Thomas Schauf, who corroborated that, adding that 10 banks control all 12 Federal Reserve branches. And in the book, The Secrets of the Federal Reserve, there's actually a chart that displays connects the Fed and its member banks to the Rothschild families, Warburgs, Rockefellers, and the others. So it gives you an idea of kind of the web, the interlinking web that is in control of a lot of these banks, which then dictate policies out of whatever government they're controlling. So in this sense, United States being controlled by the Federal Reserve and its member banks, determining policy. I mean, they can certainly hire, they don't actually have to pay off a politician, though they do this all the time, but they can also hire lobbyists to promote a certain agenda. And just to give you a little bit of insight, the factions that I recognize, you know, the terminology that I referenced before, you have the cabal. That's the term that most truth seekers utilize now. It's an umbrella term, just like Illuminati, New World Order. It represents a number of different factions or syndicates that have control and have their fingers in a lot of different areas of the world, depending on whatever resources they acquire. You know, oil, gold, silver, pretty much anything. I mean, it could be anything in the pharmaceutical industry. It could be anything in the energy sector. It could be anything in you know, food and crops. One of the worst corporations, Monsanto, getting involved in all sorts of different nefarious, has nefarious agendas and whatnot. So, but the main factor is they have to determine how certain countries are run, and they have to buy off politicians. So we call these groups, I guess the main terminology is oligarchs, which we can actually define here. Oligarchs, you have their power structure. They're essentially a base of small elites, small wealthy elites, where the power effectively rests in these small number of people, distinguished by nobility, wealth, family ties, education, or corporate, religious, or military control. These are obviously the prominent families that are most notable in the conspiracy field. So obviously Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Warburgs, Kennedys are associated with that, Romanovs out of Russia, Sinclairs and Windsors out of England, De Medici's out of Italy. So there's a slew of different families, but and I'll actually form a list in one of my later episodes. But these oligarchs, which control the vast amount of resources in the world, they then, whether they blackmail or pay, you know, blackmail, pay off, or threaten politicians and whatnot, these politicians then work for them. We'll call these politicians plutocrats or kleptocrats. Kleptocrats meaning they politicians who kind of steal natural resources and wealth. Plutocrats who derive their power from wealth. These are the types of people you'll see in political status. So in the United States, you obviously have the Clintons, the Bushes being prominent figures. Now with the new election, 2016 election, which I'll get into in either the next episode or another one after that, the way someone like Trump, even though he's kind of a new politician, new to the field, these individuals all gain notoriety and power via their wealth over the course of time. They can't actually acquire this through you know, some kind of positive outcome. They usually have to get their hands dirty, and in that sense, they're you know, they're not. They have to make deals. They have to partner up with some of these major families. Otherwise, no one's going to do business with them. So, someone like Clinton, who's affiliated with the Rockefeller faction, I mean, the organizations that comprise a lot of these factions, they still kind of ally with each other, but the alliance can be tenuous or weak at best. But they all agree on like one aspect, which is controlling humankind, controlling the planet, and suppressing knowledge and keeping us ignorant and naive of their control in the first place. So anybody who actually still believes in the two-party system in the United States hasn't done enough research to realize that it's not a two-party system, it's a one-party system, and all these politicians are just bought and paid for. So kind of understanding that aspect, and it's highly evident just based off of the last episode where I showcased, you can see certain quotes, from prominent figures. Here in this article from Collective Evolution, acknowledges the relationship between the Clintons and at least one of the couples of the Rothschilds. We all know politicians are walking billboards for giant corporations. Who controls these corporations? These corporations dish out millions of dollars in campaigns, contributions, which you, via the revelations that are coming out now, whether it's out of the FBI or whistleblowers, you see the Clinton Foundation is in kind of a mechanism to launder money to different organizations that might have a nefarious agenda or sinister agenda. Just acknowledging the who they want to place in office, in highest office in the land, the President of the United States. The fact that you have Trump right now and you have Hillary vying for positioning, and even in the primaries, it's not so much that the American people vote for these people, it's more so that you have factions kind of vying for power and position, and so they all pick a candidate, and I mean, they still need our consent to a degree, the public's consent, which is why there's like this drama that ensues amongst the entertainment. It's entertainment for the masses, all distraction for the most part. But we think we live in a democracy. It's more of a corporatocracy, which was related in the Thrive documentary. We really haven't had a democracy, or more aptly named, a constitutional republic, since the time of the founding fathers, because all these elections are rigged for the most part. Nowadays, you actually have tampering of the election via the machines and just voter registration and all. So, I mean, the primaries themselves acknowledge the superdelegate process alone, which kind of undermines the democratic process, but which this actually goes into. And aside from all the prominent figures who acknowledge this, the 29th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, said it best by saying presidents are selected, not elected, and that behind the ostensible government since enthroned, an invisible government owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. So this means politicians are for sale. There's actually a Princeton study done out of 2014 that revealed the United States is not a democracy or a republic, but rather an oligarchy, which I recognized before, where the balance of power control of global resources lies within the hands of a very small elite group of people. So acknowledging this, and many credible people all relate to this. This is not a surprise for many people, but people have to recognize this fact, because it's part of the knowledge that's foundational knowledge that will then explain a lot more of the plots, whether they're nefarious or otherwise, that are going on in society at large. It would be hard to control every aspect of society. These guys have been doing it for so long, and they have control of all the resources, and they still partner up in a lot of this in a lot of these respects. But this is why you kind of see it crumbling now. You see vying for power now. Conflict arising throughout the world is because there's a lot of defections going on right now. People switching sides, trying to get on the winning side. So one of the last things I want to do before I end this episode, I do want to go into kind of the financial aspect of what how let's say the banking cartels exist, and this will showcase how the the people behind it are losing their control and losing their influence on the masses through the money supply, because that's a huge control mechanism. So I want to go to the Gaia network, Gaia.com here. Kind of like a it has interviews done. This is one done on its show Beyond Belief with George Norrie. It has the guest Chuck Coppice. He wrote the book America's Financial Reckoning Day, and he just gives an idea of kind of the process of banking and how it's evolved over time. I just want people to kind of get a better understanding. So the last couple minutes, I'm just gonna have this show.
Say that gold and silver is not getting expensive. You know, the currency is getting cheaper. Again, see, gold and silver is the standard by which currencies are measured, and of course, there's a battle to suppress the price of precious metals. That battle is constantly going on. I have a chart. In fact, in my lectures and in my book, I start out with the evolution of money, how money has progressed, and we could show that here on the slide. Money should be a store of value. We've gone from commodity money, which is should be durable, visible.
Awesome. All right, so we have technical difficulties here. So I'll finish up with some of this, but you can see the chart here that I paused it on. Started off with commodity banking, where people would obviously put their gold in a warehouse for safekeeping, and then fiduciary, where fiduciary just means trust, where you'd have receipts. You get warehouse receipts for a lot of the gold and silver that you put into these safe, secure places. And then it evolved to fractional reserve, which you saw Foster Gamble last episode articulate that in how banks lend out more money than they actually take in. This is why a bank run would be so disastrous for them. And then it went down to fiat money, which is just banks printing money. Fiat meaning to create the dollar being the main currency out of the United States, just decreeing this being legal tender, even though it's really not. It's got to be backed by something. It should be backed by something, at least out of the U.S. Constitution acknowledges this, that it should, no currency can be created unless it's gold or silver. So it has to be backed by something. Fiat currency is not backed by anything. But anyway, so I'll go into more depth into some of this next episode. But I want to thank everybody for watching. If you have any insights that you want to relay to me, that's please comment. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for watching, guys.